Welcome to our 4-week series, Make It a Habit. A habit is an acquired behavior pattern regularly followed until it has become almost involuntary. Like brushing your teeth. You weren't born doing it, but you've done it so much, it's almost automatic. At Blackhawk, we want to develop habits that will help our relationship with Jesus grow. Our habits are not the same as faith, but they can enhance our faith. Here are the 4 habits we'll tackle in this series.
So there's this guy, and he's in college. It's a Saturday morning, and he's walking around campus with some friends, and they decide that they should get some lunch at Ian's Pizza. This guy has his mind set on a slice of mac and cheese pizza and a slice of the now discontinued barbecue steak and fries. They're getting close to the restaurant, and this guy can almost taste the pizza. He's hungry. He feels a little rumbly in the tumbly, but that rumble is more than just hunger, if you know what I mean. He takes a look around, checks his surroundings, and attempts to release the rumble. And as he passes gas, he realizes that he made a huge mistake and feels the warm sensation of poo filling his underwear. Now, it isn't much, but definitely enough to notice, though nobody around him knew what had happened. They make it to Ian's, and the guy waddles his way into the bathroom, where he quickly discards the undies in the trash can, cleans up, washes his hands, returns to the pizza line, purchasing his 2 slices, eating them, returning to his dorm as if nothing ever happened. There he took a nap, content that nobody would ever know the story of the surprise pooping of the pants that happened that day. So that guy was me, Jimmy. So excited you're here at home group tonight to hear one of my most embarrassing stories. But this is a true story, and actually stories are what we want to focus on tonight. I can already almost guarantee that most of you won't remember much from the rest of this talk, but you probably will remember the story I just told you. And why is that? There's a lot of ways to answer that question, but the main reason I think we remember and respond to stories is that God wired us that way. God is a storyteller, and since we're made in His image, we too are storytellers. We're in a series right now called Make It a Habit, about developing habits that can make us more like Jesus. And I'll be honest, when I first saw this topic, it didn't click for me. Sharing your story isn't exactly a habit. I felt like it was a bit of a stretch, but as I put a little more thought into it, I realized something about Jesus. He told a lot of stories. It was almost as if Jesus had a habit of telling stories. And more than that, the Bible isn't just a collection of different books and letters and poetry and other stuff. It's at its core a unified story that points to Jesus. And this whole story is about how God makes a perfect world where His perfect humans can exist in perfect relationship with Him, with each other, within themselves, and with the earth. But humans ruin those relationships by trying to take control away from God, defining good and evil for themselves rather than trusting their Creator. The story weaves through generation after generation of humans struggling in this new reality of sin. Sin, which is this infection that has seeped into everything and everyone, and it's simply this brokenness of what our relationships with God, each other, ourselves, and the earth are supposed to be. But the whole time that humans are dealing with their sin, there's this promise, this hope that the people of God cling to, that He's gonna bring into the world a human who will make everything right again. And eventually, we meet this human as a baby in a manger. His name is Jesus, and He is God with us, God become human. When He grows up, Jesus starts doing miracles and teaches about a new kingdom and a new way of living and being human. But His radical message gets Him in trouble, and the powerful empire conspires with the powerful religious leaders, and they kill Jesus by nailing Him to a cross. little do they know that this death will not last. 3 days later, Jesus rises from the dead, and sometime after that leaves the world but sends the Holy Spirit to live and empower those who believe this story. And this story begins to spread around the world as more and more people not only trust the story, but participate in the story. And now here you are tonight hearing this story with the invitation to trust and participate in it too. The Bible isn't a list of rules for you to follow. It's not a checklist of things to do to make yourself right with God or a handbook on how to live a better life. The Bible is a story that invites you into a new reality where you are free from sin and shame, where you can live a life that can be transformative as you become more and more like Jesus. And really, that's what every good story is, an invitation. I mean, think of the Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Star Wars, the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. These are all stories that invite us into an epic battle between good and evil. We read stories in the news that invite us into human suffering and conflict, and we read other stories that invite us into the joy and wonder of this world. A good story is always an invitation to participate in something bigger than ourselves. The whole point of this talk is to get us to think about what it could look like to make a habit out of sharing our stories. Jesus had a habit of sharing stories, and that means that if we're followers of Jesus, if we're Christians, we're invited to make a habit out of sharing our stories too. And I just want to take a moment to address the feeling in the room because I've heard the same line from a lot of middle schoolers over the years. And that line is this: but I don't have a story. And your temptation to say that is a lie. You know how I know? Because up to this point that you're watching this video, you've been alive. You've done stuff, you've seen stuff, you've laughed, you've cried, you've done stupid stuff and awesome stuff, and maybe even some super awesome stuff that was super stupid too. Everyone has a story to share. And I'm sorry for the ways that we've highlighted stories that are more intense or have crazier plot twists than what your life might look like. And in doing that, we've made you think that in order to have a story, you must go through something hard or extremely challenging. But the truth is simply that if you've lived any amount of time in this world, you have a story, and that story is beautiful because the God who made you and is writing your story with you thinks you're beautiful. Remember how I said that a good story is an invitation? Well, for some of you, you've heard the story of Jesus. You've been offered an invitation to life with him, but you haven't accepted that gift yet. And if that's you, I want you to know that your story is still awesome and valuable, and we love you. Welcome to Home Group. But for the rest of you who have accepted Jesus's invitation by trusting him and uniting your story with his story, there's something really cool and unique about the stories you get to share, because every time you share your story, you're not just inviting people to participate in your story, you're inviting them to participate in God's story. Try this out sometime. When you're sharing about your weekend or about what you did during break or about that funny moment from class, just weave in a little bit of Jesus, a little bit of love and grace, and see what happens. And the more you do this, the more comfortable you will get with doing it. And the more comfortable you get with sharing stories with a little bit of Jesus flavor, the more people will feel invited into this new kind of life offered by Jesus. And the more people who accept that invitation, the more beautiful and loving the world will be. All because you made a habit out of telling stories. So you may have noticed I didn't read anything from the Bible during this video. I didn't forget. That was actually on purpose because I want to make sure that you all take a chance to read the Bible together during your small group time. And here's what I want you to do. Read a story about Jesus and just let it invite you in. Don't simply listen to it. Let it do something to your heart and your mind and cause you to wonder and ask questions and see the world differently and see yourself differently. That's the power of these stories. And that's the power of the big unified story that points to Jesus. And this story is an invitation to join in on one of the most incredible adventures life has to offer. Are you in? Have a good night.